Life had been pretty straightforward and pleasant for the last few years. I'd been married to Hannah for 6 of those years. Even when our connection wasn't perfect, I felt we were doing well. My job consumed most of my time and energy, pushing me deeper into my career. At the same time, Hannah's busy social life sometimes got on my nerves, but I thought we had found a rhythm that worked for us. We still made time for each other, like our Saturday night tradition. Sure, there were occasional cracks in our relationship, but they seemed minor and manageable. Or so I thought. Then last weekend happened. Hannah seemed unusually eager to attend a party her employer was hosting for Jake. "It's nothing serious, just some work friends," she said, brushing off my hesitation. Her tone felt dismissive, as if I were a child pestering her about a harmless gathering. "You should come too. It'll be fun," she added, her voice light, though it felt insincere. I decided to go, convincing myself it was about being supportive, but deep down, something felt off. She had been distant lately, spending more time on her phone and often smiling at her screen, lost in her own world. When I asked who she was talking to, her replies were vague: "It's just Emma," or "It's work." At the party, Hannah disappeared into the crowd almost immediately. She was always the social butterfly, effortlessly moving from one conversation to the next. I stood there nursing a beer, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling in my gut, but I couldn't shake it. Her behavior was different, her eyes kept scanning the room as if she were looking for someone. I told myself I was overthinking, but something urged me to follow her. Stepping outside into the cool night air, the backyard softly lit with fairy lights, I searched for her. I first heard her laugh, a sound I knew too well, coming from the far corner of the yard. My heart dropped. There she was, standing with a man I didn't recognize. They were far too close, her hand rested lightly on his chest, and his arm casually wrapped around her waist. Their heads leaned in, sharing a closeness that should have been ours. Then they kissed. A wave of disbelief and pain crashed over me. My mind screamed at me to look away, but I couldn't move. I stood frozen, watching as the life I thought I had crumbled in an instant. The beer bottle in my hand slipped and hit the ground with a dull thud. The sound startled Hannah, her eyes flew open, and when they met mine, she looked shocked and panicked. I felt nothing but hurt and anger. The guy next to her looked between us, confused, but I didn't wait for an explanation. I turned and walked away, feeling a pain I had never known before. She didn't come home that night. The next morning, when she finally walked through the door, she looked a mess, makeup smeared, red eyes, flushed cheeks. "Jake, please let me explain," she said, but I wasn't interested. I couldn't listen to the excuses. I just stood there as she stammered, mentioning a Brandon from work. In that moment, I realized this wasn't a mistake or a weak moment, it was a choice, a series of choices she had made repeatedly. Her betrayal wasn't just about a kiss, it was a betrayal of everything we had built together. As she finished her tearful confession, I realized I had made up my mind. I found myself packing a bag. "Jake, please," she begged, her voice trembling. I held up a hand to stop her. "I need time to think, Hannah. Don't follow me." Her shoulders slumped as she stepped aside, and I walked out the door, knowing everything had changed. Sitting across from my oldest friend, Ryan, I could see he was trying to process what had just happened. "That's messed up, man," he muttered, shaking his head. We sat in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on us. Finally, Ryan spoke cautiously, "I'm not sure what you're going to do." I stared ahead, my thoughts a storm. We'd been together for 7 years. This couldn't end like this, could it? Ryan didn't answer immediately. He leaned back, studying me, then said, "It doesn't have to be the end." I shook my head, cutting him off. "A mistake is forgetting my birthday." "This wasn't a mistake, Ryan. This was a choice." Ryan nodded silently, not pushing further. He left, and I sat in the dimly lit living room, staring at the wedding photo on the mantelpiece. Hannah's smile was frozen in time, her eyes filled with love. It felt like a cruel joke. I picked up the frame and turned it face down. Tomorrow, I would figure out what happened next. For now, I just had to get through the night. Sunday morning hit like a freight train. The silence in the house was suffocating. I hadn't slept, my thoughts consumed by her and Brandon laughing and kissing as if I didn't exist. If Hannah thought I'd accept her sob story, she was wrong. I needed answers. In our shared workspace, I approached her laptop, once ours, now mostly hers for work. I hesitated but couldn't stop myself as the screen lit up. I opened an email dated just a few weeks ago. "I can't stop thinking about last night. You're amazing. I'll figure out a way to see you soon," it read. My stomach twisted as I scrolled through each message, documenting late-night meetings, hotel stays, and excuses. Her calendar was meticulously filled with fake work events, each detail carefully arranged to cover their secret rendezvous. The anger that had been simmering boiled over. I slammed the laptop shut and stormed over to her nightstand. In the drawer, I found her journal, a leather-bound diary. I opened it and scanned the pages filled with neat cursive writing. "I feel so alive when I'm with Brandon, but I feel guilty. Jake doesn't deserve this. What's wrong with me?" I threw the journal back down in anger. I had read everything, each betrayal and lie laid out in cold, undeniable clarity. My phone buzzed with a message from Hannah. "Jake, I can't take the silence. Can we talk?" I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Finally, I typed back, "Not yet." By Monday, the storm inside me had only grown. When she texted again, asking to meet, I agreed to meet at my house at 6. She arrived right on time, her face pale, eyes tired, and her hesitant smile did little to reassure me. "Jake," she began, her voice tentative. "Sit down," I said coldly, cutting her off. She obeyed, nervously fidgeting with her hands. I placed her laptop and journal on the coffee table. "What's this?" I asked, my voice flat. Her face drained of color as her eyes darted between the items. "You made a mistake," she said. Her sobs grew louder, but I felt nothing, just cold, empty numbness. I grabbed the journal and slammed it onto the table. "You wrote this, didn't you? I feel alive when I'm with him." She reached for the journal, but I snatched it away. "No, you don't get to run from this. You owe me the truth, Hannah." For the next 20 minutes, I laid out everything, every lie, every betrayal. "Jake, please don't do this," she begged, her eyes filled with desperation. "I'm sorry, Hannah. I'm filing for divorce." "It's done," I said firmly. "Hannah, please don't do this," she pleaded, panic in her voice. "You wrote this, didn't you? I feel alive when I'm with him." She reached for the journal again, but I held it tight. "You owe me the truth." By the end of my recounting, she was sobbing into her hands. "Why?" I demanded, my voice cracking. Why wasn't I enough for you? Through her tears, she whispered, I made a mistake, Jake. I know I did. You keep calling it a mistake, but this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice you made over and over again. Her sobs echoed my pain, but I felt nothing. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered, barely audible. You're standing up now, and you'll deal with the consequences. Her eyes filled with desperation as she looked up at me. Jake, please don't do this, she begged. I shook my head. It's done, Hannah. I'm filing for divorce. Pack your things and leave. This isn't your home anymore. She begged for another hour, her words desperate and teary, but my decision didn't waver. When she finally walked out the door, I felt lighter. Our life together was over, but I was still standing. For now, that was enough.